My name is Kristen Thompson, and I'm the Education Director for the Future of Music Coalition. I'm also a musician and an entrepreneur. This presentation was originally put together for a guest lecture at McGill University in 2007, but in 2008 we began using it at musician education events that FMC organized in Chicago and New York. It's a quick tour of some of today's most compelling new internet-based music business models, and in particular, if and how musicians, labels, and songwriters are compensated under many of these new systems. The version that you're looking at today was updated for the 8th Future of Music Policy Summit, which was held in Washington, D.C. in October 2009. Because the information that's in this presentation tends to change fairly frequently, we pledge to update it as we need to. Let's start by looking at the big picture. Historically, musicians needed at least three things in order to have a chance at a, quote, successful release. First, access to financing to record and manufacture a record. Second, access to the major promotion channels, especially commercial radio, but also big music industry magazines like Rolling Stone and Spin, as well as MTV. Third, access to the distribution channels that would get your CD into retail outlets, especially the big chain stores like Tower and Borders and HMV. Until recently, there was really only one way you could participate in this model of success. You'd sign a major label contract and therefore have access not only to the money to record, but also to the label's PR and distribution machines. But the trade-off was you almost always had to sign away your copyrights. But rapid technological developments have leveled the playing field and given musicians many new ways to produce, promote, and distribute music. Now, thanks to consumer-based digital recording technologies like Pro Tools and GarageBand, there are a lot more affordable options for musicians when it comes to recording. Before, you needed major label money and connections to promote your record. It's still very hard to get on commercial radio if you're not on a major label, but now there's thousands of internet radio and webcasting stations and satellite radio. Then there's sites like Pandora or Slacker or Last.fm that offer streaming services. And there's YouTube and countless blogs that are serving as new tastemakers and critics for the digital age. Perhaps the most promising development is the vastly improved access to distribution. Thanks to the internet, the older constraints related to inventory and shelf space in a retail situation are no longer an issue. The Eagles and the Eagles of Death Metal are both available on iTunes or Amazon or Rhapsody or Napster 24/7 around the world. For indie and unsigned artists, being able to sell your music on the same platforms and through the same media as major label bands is a revolutionary example of how the internet has changed the playing field. So here's what we're going to do in this presentation. We're going to walk you through some of the new music business models so you can see some of the options that today's musicians have for making their music available to fans. We'll focus on a few examples that fit in these 5 broad categories: digital stores, on-demand playback services, artist-to-fan connections, new patronage models, and new forms of radio, in particular webcasting and satellite radio. As a companion to this presentation, we've created 2 documents. The first shows exactly if and how much labels, songwriters, performers, and publishers are compensated for each of these examples. Visit futureofmusic.org/files/newbusinessmodels.pdf to check that out. The second document explains in plain language how unsigned and indie musicians can get their music into these digital music services and how much it costs. You can download that at futureofmusic.org/files/digitaldistribution.pdf. Just to be clear about 2 things before we jump in. First, there are hundreds of interesting new ways that folks are using the internet to promote their music. This presentation focuses largely on models and services that provide some compensation to musicians, songwriters, or labels. Second, we want to put this in perspective. It's unlikely that any of these new services will take the place of the revenue from traditional CD sales or from the money generated from playing live shows. But they do offer musicians and music fans a huge range of options, some that even feel free to the consumer, but actually distribute some money to creators. So, Let's begin.